Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. That's why this is called Chamber Chats. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. We, of course, are proud and privileged to live and work alongside them every day. Chamber Chats is made possible through the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. And normally we would be doing this in the studios at Czech Television, but I'm in my chamber office today and my guests are in their offices. We're going to talk today about a couple of things that you've heard about through the news. Two transformative projects are happening in our region that will just change the entire complexion of the regions where that's happening. One of them is at Royal Bay, or if you will, Royal Beach in Colwood, which is why Rob Martin, the mayor of Colwood, joins us today. Mayor, how are you?
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
And the other one is going to happen at one of the busiest points in the entire capital region. That is where Douglas Street and the Pat Bay Highway come together. That's Uptown, and that whole area is going to transform to something called the Uptown Douglas Plan. The mayor of Saanich, Fred Haynes, is here to talk about that. Mayor, how are you?
I'm great, Bruce, and thank you for hosting this and for doing the great work the Chamber does across the region.
Thanks very much. So we're going to talk about this in a couple of different terms, gentlemen. One is that, Rob, your project in Colwood is basically taking a space that's been unused for a long time. It's an old quarry site. So you're kind of building new. Fred, what you're doing is transforming an existing neighborhood and making that look a little different and build it up. So Fred, let's start with you. What exactly is going to happen in that whole project around Uptown? Tell me about that.
Well, it's a very exciting project. We're going to take that, as you've mentioned, a transit hub and make it into a commercial, residential, light industry and transit hub and a people place. We started this work in February 2016. It's been 7 years. Incredible consultation on it, a lot of community buy-in, a lot of advice. It comes to public hearing on February the 15th. But this will lead the growth in our residential area as we protect our rural spaces outside the urban containment boundary. We're going to densify along our corridors, centres and villages, and this is the major centre. We're going to try to build 4,000 new diverse housing opportunities over the next 20 years. We're going to increase the green space. We're going to increase the retail space, the commercial space, and the industrial space. And it's all to do with not going out, but going up. We don't have the luxury that Mayor Martin does in the beautiful Colwood of unused sites. We're already pretty built out. So we have to revitalize and reimagine our current urban centers and try to optimize that. And that's what I think this plan does. It will be a multimodal transit hub. It'll retain itself as a primary employment center, but on top of that, it will add access to connectivity. We want to break up the long blocks and make them more people-oriented, people-plazaed. We're going to support the introduction of development that enhances the mixed use and vibrancy of the area. So it's really future-looking. There will be mode shift to have reduced car use, or what we call car light housing, because they'll be right on the all ages and abilities active transportation, the cycle routes, and the transit hub. So we're very excited about it. It goes out to market after the February 15th, and already we've had a number of people looking at opportunities there. So we're thrilled. It's been 6 years of hard work, and we're delighted.
We're going to do a deeper dive into that in just a second. But Mayor Martin, let's go back to what's happening in Colwood with the site that's kind of divided right in half by Machosen Road. It's right almost to the Machosen border for those who possibly haven't been there. But the top half of Royal Bay has already been under development for a while. But tell me what's going to happen on the bottom. This is very exciting.
Yeah, sure. So we have development happening on both sides, which is really exciting. But let's talk about Royal Beach just for a second. So we had an announcement just last week. We have two new partners, Seacliff and Reliance, who are coming into our community and really looking at developing out that space. What we're looking at is about 130 acres. Over 30 of those acres will be parkland, which we're really excited about. But we're talking about roughly about 2,850 dwellings that are going to land into the Royal Beach side, and about 860,000 square feet of commercial that's also going to get built. Now, that's just on the Royal Beach side. On the Royal Bay side, which you just talked about, we have two main areas. We have Royal Bay North and Royal Bay South. Latoria North and Latoria South. Latoria North has already been built out, and those are single-family homes, and that's about 770 homes that have already been built. And then in Latoria South, we're looking at about 2,100 more dwellings that are going to get built, and about 430,000 square feet of commercial. On top of that, what we're really excited about in Royal Bay, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, too, is in Royal Bay itself, is we have the new Royal British Columbia Collections and Archives building that's landing there. And then right beside it, the CRD has purchased 5 acres for a long-term senior assisted living hospital. And so we're going to see that. And then right beside the hospital is where we have that 200,000 square feet of commercial, with the anchor tenant being Quality Foods, which is opening in January of 2023.
Wow, it's amazing what's going on. A credit to both of you for all the work you've done. You've both mentioned housing. Housing is, of course, a paramount concern for the Chamber and, well, for everybody, as we've seen the prices skyrocket lately. Can you talk a little bit, first, Mayor Haynes, to you about the affordable housing element and what's going to happen at Uptown Douglas?
You know, Bruce, I'm glad you've raised housing because, like Mayor Martin, we have a full court press on everything we can do to increase our supply and affordability of housing. We have the region's highest housing cost, lowest vacancy rate, and unfortunately a modest variety of supply. So this plan addresses that in all its shapes and forms. We will have market housing. We'll have accommodation for people of different ages and incomes. There will be different types of arrangements from rental suites up to multifamily homes. The towers are going to go to 18 to 24 floors. So it's appealing to the market because we cannot build out of it as a municipality. We have to incentivize and entice the development community and governments. So this plan does all of that. But the details as it rolls out will be in what the market brings to the table. As a council, we've signalled the importance of affordability, diversity, and flexibility. We also want this to be a place where people can live, work, and play, have daycare, have physicians, have all those amenities there. So one of the affordability issues is travel. If we can have people operate tight to their community, that reduces the 12 to 19% of their disposable income, which can go to travel. So that's a part of it. The other piece of affordability is to go to car light. But we need additional housing. It's going to go high in the center, up 18 to 24. It can be 8 to 12 on the shoulders, and then down to 4 to 6, and then single family. Every form of housing you can think of, we have in this plan. And what we hear from the development community and the non-profits is they're very excited.
Great. Okay, we are now going to talk about the affordability factor at Royal Bay. We'll do that next. This is a Chamber Chat today. We're talking about the developments at Uptown Douglas and then on the West Shore at Royal Bay and Royal Beach. Mayor Fred Haynes is here from the district of Saanich. In Colwood, the mayor, Rob Martin, is here. So, Rob, let's pick up on that conversation before. Talk to me about the affordability factor that's being embedded into this project at Royal Bay and Royal Beach.
Sure. You know, one of the things when COVID first hit, Bruce, one of the things that we did as a city is we did an economic recovery plan. And so we began to talk to our small businesses and to sort of hear what small businesses needed from us as a city. And I was really expecting to hear reduce my tax rate. That's what I was expecting to hear. But what they said to us as a council was, it's about creating affordability. You need to provide affordability within your community. That's what we need from a small business standpoint. And so one of the things that we're really proud about at the city of Colwood is if you look at, and this came from actually Focus on Victoria, they posted that in 2021, the city of Colwood actually overperformed and had more dwelling opens than either Victoria or Langford. And 2/3 of those dwellings were affordable housing units. And so we have really spent a significant amount of time trying to figure out how to create that. And there's all sorts of different dynamics that you can do. One of my favorite affordable housing buildings that I have is in Belmont Park. And we're going to try and recreate that here in Royal Bay too. But it was a coalition with the provincial government, and it was specifically focused on people earning somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. And so you say, well, why are we doing that for that? Well, that's because it's two people who are working minimum wage jobs, and that's how much income they're earning. So we need to be able to support those people. And just exactly how Mayor Haynes said it, is we need to make sure that those people who are working minimum wage jobs in our community can also live in our community.
Bruce, I'll just come in on that as well. The other thing on affordability is the time to the application approval and the certainty of it. And for 3 years, we've been working on Saanich with a housing needs assessment from the province to improve our systems. It's heavy lifting. We have a new CAO coming in, Mr. Brent Rems, and that's all part of our formula, we believe, to do a better job as a municipality to give certainty of applications and reduce timelines. Because like Mayor Martin, we've heard from the companies and the employers, they need housing and they need it where their workers are. And that's our responsibility to deliver.
Yeah. So transportation was brought up earlier on. I want to pick up on that. Mayor Martin, I'm going to start with you. When people hear about these plans, they get, it's wonderful. We're going to get these houses in place. We're going to keep growing here. But the Colwood crawl always comes up in the conversation. Does this mean we're going to have more people driving back and forth? Which we're going to loop back on by saying there are more people actually going up and down on the Pat Bay and into Gordon Head than there are coming in from the Colwood crawl aspect. But let's talk about that. How will that new development become more accessible, and how will mobility be a factor?
Yeah, and transportation is the key, and we recognize this. And it's about planning out, not for today, but making sure we're planning out for seven generations from now so that we're successful. And that's part of the reason I talk about the passenger ferry, for example, coming from the West Shore to the Inner Harbor. And we were just talking offline about it possibly landing in Ogden Point. But that moves people a certain way. It also, we need to make sure that we're also building LRT into our plans, and we're building it from a long-term standpoint. One of the things I'm really fortunate at is Mayor Haynes and I both sit on the Victoria Transit Commission. And I know we're both passionate about how do we move people through public systems to get them out of their cars to do that. And we can focus a little bit on active transportation and how do we get people on bikes and those type of things, but we can also look at creative solutions. I wanted to read, if you don't mind, one of my developers, Reliance, the president of Reliance is John Stovall. And John Stovall on Wednesday put a tweet out which talking about SkyTrain in Vancouver. And I just loved what he said here. He said SkyTrains should be paid for by municipalities by housing permit approvals. Say one house permit equals X number of transit dollars. It should be paid in advance of construction of the line. And I see the same thing of us being able to do that in Royal Bay and Royal Beach, and help figure out how do we subsidize and pay for that public transportation that we're talking about. And it's a really exciting opportunity. And it's exciting when developers have that vision to understand that the success of their projects lies in them also figuring out some of these solutions.
Yeah. And when you talk about the West Shore Ferry, we could do a whole show about that at one point, but that's a marine factor. It's going to be happening at Royal Bay and Royal Beach too, right? Because there is a plan for a marina to be embedded in this whole thing too, right?
Correct. Yes. So Royal Beach is oceanfront property. It's about 1 kilometer long. We are making sure that ocean is accessible to everybody in the public. We're not allowing single-family homes or private institutions to monopolize that shoreline. That we're going to make sure that shoreline stays open, just like Dallas Road stays open for everyone.
Great. Okay, Mayor Fred Haynes, Saanich. Let's talk about transportation. We're talking about a transit hub. This is where the TransCanada and Douglas Street, if you will, and then the Pat Bay merge right at that uptown location. Tell me about what that's going to look like. What's the transportation element in and out of that?
So, Bruce, on this point, we understand that in Saanich we have a responsibility in that transportation hub of all those routes coming together to facilitate the free and convenient transportation of goods and people through that choke point or access point. So we have a very much an understanding of that and are looking forward to the future to see how we can best do that. We have taken one lane off of Vernon Road in the Nigel Valley application, and there's a conversation that council's had to talk to the ministry to see how we can get a memorandum of understanding with the collective that have those roads. It's quite a list. So the Douglas, Blanchard, Vernon and Ravine Way are the Ministry of Transportation. The CRD is responsible for the Galloping Goose and the Lochside Trail. The BC Transit future plan identifies Douglas Street as a rapid transit corridor. And this is where the regional mayors work together to understand this together at the Regional Transit Commission and at CRD to plan these aspects. But we have to have a future-looking plan that will make sure that while we address housing, address our economic needs, we also are facilitating the future types of transportation shifts that there will be, as well as providing businesses and amenities, transportation. This is a key transportation hub, and we have to get that right. And we are in conversations with MOTI, with the CRD, and we will be talking to other regional partners, the other mayors, to make sure we get this right. But I have a suggestion here for Mayor Martin on his ferry. I've got a very nice example behind me here of
Yeah,
an ideal ferry that actually floats from Colwood above the ocean to Saanich so we can help each other out.
I look forward to further conversations about that and what it's going to look like. That's for sure. We are now going to talk about the idea that you're building community, really. You're building little hubs of places where people can live and work. But next, I want to talk about the working part. On the Chamber Chat today, we're speaking with Colwood Mayor Rob Martin and with the Saanich Mayor Fred Haynes about two remarkable projects coming up in the immediate future for both of those municipalities. So, Mayor Rob Martin, let's first of all talk about something you referred to earlier. When you're creating this Royal Beach and Royal Bay complex, there are now opportunities for people to work where they live, which kind of goes back to addressing the idea of transportation challenges. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So one of the mission statements that was really clear when our last election was about how do we create more employment within Colwood so that people don't have to leave. And, starting off, let's just talk about the things I've already talked about. So, for example, the Collections and Archives building. The Collections and Archives building, it's over 600 construction jobs, which I realize is short-term, and then about 300 permanent long-term jobs. What I'm excited about that, though, is close to 100 of those jobs are PhD-level jobs. So they're high-paying, good jobs. It's not about creating sort of a retail space where it's minimum wage-paying jobs. You look at the hospital beside it, we're talking about somewhere between 300 and 400 employees happening there as well. And then you look at our commercial zone that sits right beside that hospital. We're talking quality foods and over 200,000 square feet of businesses with banks and so on. So we're talking about another 400 to 500 jobs. So just in that one little region, we've created over 1,000 permanent, long-term, good-paying jobs. When we start developing out Royal Beach, we really see Royal Beach as being, a second to none place as a jewel of Lower Vancouver Island. And so we're going to be attracting some really strong businesses. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with SIP, South Island Prosperity Project, just this last week. And we were talking about how much the landscape has even changed around perhaps trying to attract tech into your community, because a lot of tech now is people are working from home. So, we're always going to have to figure out and evolve how we're going to attract those businesses. But what's important is that we're attracting good paying jobs. It's not just about attracting jobs just for the sake of jobs.
Yeah. So Mayor Fred Haynes, I'm going to sort of paint a little picture here. We're talking about where Uptown currently is. There's the little Gateway Plaza where like Big Wheel Burger is. There's the Saanich Plaza where Save-On is. There's an area adjacent to that over on Tennyson Road, which is light industrial. All of that is going to be an opportunity for employment to be created, right?
Yeah. So what we see here is all that housing and development that I talked about, those towers, short and large, and the housing. This is right on our industrial area around Tennyson. It's a significant commercial and retail and industrial centre now with about 10,000 jobs. So what we have to do is facilitate the new jobs coming here. And I think Mayor Martin hit it well when he said, we've got to bring in the tech. And a lot of the tech works from home. And in our designs of those towers, and we're seeing designs coming forward where the housing piece also shifts to an office piece. We've already seen the drive of COVID to empty out the big cities, and that's part of our housing influx. And we're attracting some of the country's best and brightest to this region, and they're going to bring jobs with them, or they're going to enable jobs. When we look at the Plaza area and the Nigel Valley, right across to the Saanich Municipal Hall, we envision that as a massive campus. We have UVic down the road. We have Camosun College. The amount of talent here is considerable. We want the housing structure and form with businesses on the lower floors, including supporting the integration of commercial, light industry, and residential in almost like a multi-story format. So the idea is to have all the elements we need. We don't want to lose our industrial assets. We don't want to reduce our commercial assets just because we're building housing. We think the vibrant city centres of the future have exactly as Mayor Martin has described, that people can live, work, and play with great jobs in their area.
It's apparent to me we're going to have to do another one of these to talk about this because we're almost out of time. But in the meantime, just to wrap it up, Mayor Rob Martin in Colwood, you're protecting a very precious piece of shoreline there with what's going on. And you've got an area where you've got an ability, both of you do, for there to be a large, green, sustainable, earth, planet-friendly element to what you're doing. So Mayor Martin, tell me about that with Royal Bay and Royal Beach.
Yeah, sure. So right now, we're going through a process which is the Waterfront Stewardship plan, and so we've actually hired a consultant to help us walk through how do we protect this waterfront, but still activate it so that people have an opportunity to enjoy it and go down. You know, there's a diverse opinions in our community about how we do that. But I believe what we're doing is we're moving towards something that's really going to be integrated where nature can exist with the residents and the residents have an opportunity to engage in that nature experience. And I think that adds a huge value to community as you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And Mayor Fred Haynes, we're talking about build, shift, go up, do all of that. But that can all be done in a sustainable manner. This is not something that's going to be traditional old style building, is it?
Correct. When you see, that's why we took 7 years to plan this. We actually started it a couple of years ago with the amazing revitalization of Regina Park, which is at the entranceway into Uptown as you come in from Colwood. But inside that plan, we're looking at 30% green coverage, 30%, so that when you come out, you'll be surrounded by green. We don't have the beautiful luxury that Rob has in terms of the existing nature. We're going to build nature back into these spaces, along with public plants, plazas, and plantings. We're looking for significant growth in the amount of trees and green space and the addition of parks. And I think that's what you do when you turn a place from a space to a place where you have all those other amenities that the people are coming to the island for. Our environmental credentials are second to none. And when we get refugees, I'll call them, from Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Winnipeg, the exodus from those cities to here, they're coming here, not just for the jobs, but they're coming here for the green space and the environment. It's critical that we protect that, and this plan does that. And we're going to improve as we go along. But one of the things we're going to do is ensure that those applications that come forward have these amenities embedded into them.
These are transformative times, as we said at the beginning of this, and I want to thank you both for your time today to explain this. Thank you also for your leadership and all that you do all the time in the roles that you play as an elected official, as a mayor. And people probably don't fully understand the amount of time and effort it takes to do what you folks do. So thank you for that, and thank you again for your time today. Rob Martin is the mayor of the city of Colwood, and Fred Haynes is the mayor of the district of Saanich. And that's Chamber Chat for this time around. We'll see you next time. I'm Bruce Williams.